Yeah, there you go. We are on record.
Okay, calling Ohio City Design Review Board to order April 15th.
All right. So do we have Sherwin Williams here for their signage?
Nathan Glasson with Brady Signs for Sherwin Williams.
Awesome. Oh no. Well, here we go. It's sideways for now. Do you want to start talking about your project and I'll pull it up?
Okay. Yeah, so I have not seen a completed rendering. Obviously the building at the corner was in pretty much shambles, which is why Dual Light, the signage partner for Sherwin Williams, put together the renderings that you see. The building signage is it was existing at another location. It has been removed by another sign company, and we just got involved with it about a week and a half ago, maybe a little bit more than that. So you have two flat wall signs that will be mounted on the surface of the building that are essentially they're remote channel letters, LED lit with a backer panel, one on each street facing elevation. And then there is an illuminated LED illuminated blade sign that is double-sided that will be a projecting sign off of the corner elevation of the building. And then the other requests that we're presenting today is some window graphics that from Dual Light, who we're partnering with for the installation part, from their understanding of the code, is allowed at 25% of the window surface area. Those have not been measured yet to know the exact height by width dimension that'll need to be, but we are requesting 25%, which is, from my understanding, the max allowed.
Here, let me do a new share. All right. Do you have any questions from our?
And now that we have it on the screen, I can go through each page and kind of reiterate what I've somewhat described without a visual. So that again is starting there. The projecting, call it blade sign, that will be double-sided, mounted on a corner elevation. And again, that is LED illuminated. And actually on that same page, these are not my favorite drawings, but it does show a small visual of the window graphic just to the left of the elevation rendering that describes the 25% that is being requested.
Do you want me to go to the next slide?
You can, yeah. And then there's two of these signs, one on the Lorraine Ave elevation and one on the West 44th, I believe it is. Signs are identical, backer panel with remote channel letters mounted to the backer panel. And those are LED lit as well. And then that next page there gives a little bit larger visual of the window graphics that are being requested. And then those next few pages, I don't even know that those needed to be submitted. That's Sherwin Williams preliminary signage code check that they performed months in advance, I assume. And that's the total project.
I'm having a hard time understanding what the window graphic is. Do you have any details on that? It looks like, it almost looks like underneath where it says 25% of window area, 2018 window graphic with sky. Is that supposed to be a detail of the window graphic?
It is.
Okay. What is that actually of?
It's a sky backdrop, backscape, I guess, to describe what the detail is on the bottom half. I don't know for sure what it is. All I can tell you is that it is a variety of different colors. The best I can assume, because I don't know the answer, is just a visual of a variety of paint colors. But I don't know specifically what that's supposed to be.
I see. I think I'm starting to make out what this is. It's kind of it's a series of color swatches with
Correct.
background. It's not very detailed, so it's a little hard to tell what it, to see that here. But
Sure.
I see.
And it's very difficult to see on the elevation rendering, but as you can see, it's just kind of a continuation of the same graphic across all of the windows. I think 11 in total. Yes, 11.
All right, I'll go ahead with my comments. I guess the double-sided sign that's mounted to the wall, personally, I feel like it's a little too large. It's 73 inches by 77. I would love to see that reduced closer to 4 feet by 4 feet. It just feels very large on that building. I would love to see a detail of the window graphic that we can actually really read. And otherwise, that's all I really have. The other signage, I didn't have a problem with the Sherwin-Williams sign.
I'd agree with Adam for what it's worth. If there are no other comments, I'd be happy to make a motion.
So just to repeat, so we would prefer, what we're asking for, Adam, is the Sherwin-Williams logo to be 4x4. We think that the proposed logo is a little too large.
Yeah, right now it'll stand 6 foot tall in total, 73 inches. So
Okay.
reducing the size of the height will also proportionally reduce the size of the width, or vice versa. Actually, the width is wider. So to clarify, if we were to have the size reduced to 4 foot wide, the height will be slightly less than 4 foot, or would we be okay making the height 4 foot, which would make the width slightly wider than 4 foot?
I guess my preference would be to have the maximum size at 4 foot. So the width that it sticks out from the building would be roughly 4 feet.
Okay.
And then you'd like more details about this window graphic?
Correct.
Okay, so anyone else have comments?
I agree with Alex, and I think the logo is a little bit big, so.
All right, well then, if there's no more, are there any other comments?
I agree as well. Same comment.
All right, well then I will make a motion to approve conditioned on the acceptance of Adam's comments, recommendations.
Does anybody second that motion?
Malaz rose her hand.
All in favor?
So Antonia?
Aye.
Malaz Al-Jamiabi seconded, Alex Frondorf,
Aye.
and Adam Rose Kelly. So unanimously approved with the conditions as mentioned. So your next stop is Landmarks Commission, and they will have all the information.
Okay, and I'll get revised drawings and some better images of the window graphics and get those resubmitted.
Thank you very much. If
All
you
right,
have
thank you.
questions, please let me know.
Okay, appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. All right, do we have our second application? Beacon Architecture or the developer?
Yes, this is Paul Began. I am here. I believe the owner, Michael Yap, is also on as well.
Hi again.
Hello.
You're welcome to start and let me know when you'd like me to go to the next slide.
Sure. I think the committee remembers from last time, this is just a site plan. You could move on to the next slide if you want. I think what you had requested last time is some pictures of the house in its existing state, and I think we have some of those farther in the slide presentation. I think also a recommendation to, there you go, a recommendation to extend the hardy on the south side, which is the side facing the alley, and which we have done that as well too. So the intent is to do the fiber cement siding on a small portion of the north side, which facing the existing house. If you look at the picture in the upper right that's on the screen right now, you'll kind of see there's a break line in the house right there. So we would extend the fiber cement siding up to that point, bring it around the front, across the whole south side on the south picture there, and where we have fiber cement siding, doing the aluminum clad wood windows in those openings. As we discussed before, the existing porch is going to be retained, and color schemes we have on one of the next slides, I believe, or maybe it was the previous slide to that. There we go there, of doing a light gray and white, whether it be in the fiber cement or the vinyl that's on the back of the house. The windows would be white as well too, so that the trim and the window sash colors is the same as far as the white, doing the lighter gray for a majority of it, and then where we have the decorative half round pieces, those would be in the darker gray, which would match the trim on the porch.
And committee members, Doug is here also, just wanted to let everyone know.
Anything further, Paul?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, I think from what I recall from the last meeting, those were the items that you had wanted Michael to consider. So we went ahead and made those revisions.
Okay, thank you for that. Since the last meeting, I've had an opportunity to study the history of this house, the condition that it was in before the renovations began in the fall of last year. And in so doing, reviewing historic photos of what the house looked like. And I have to say that this is one of the worst cases I have ever seen being on the board of the design review for what has happened to this house. The wood siding that existed in all of the detailing, the scallop, the chimney, the brickwork, the chimney caps, those were all destroyed needlessly. They were not in
Mr.
such a
Frondorf,
condition.
I'm going to disagree with you because I think we explained last time at the meeting.
Yep,
It was
you
an
did.
absolute necessity structurally, either the house gets torn down or we do the structural requirements to fix this house. So
There are
the
ways.
siding needed to be removed. And believe me, we looked at any other options that we could do to not have to do sheathing on this house. There was no way to maintain the balloon framing studs with the way that the house was structured. The siding, wood siding was applied directly to the studs. There was nothing between the studs and the siding.
Paul, thank you. I appreciate that. For the sake of argument and for the sake of argument alone,
Okay.
I will accept your position for very limited, just for this purpose only.
Okay.
It does not necessitate then the trashing of the wood. Was the wood detailing retained?
I don't believe any of the wood was retained.
Exactly. It could have been retained and it could have been placed back on if what you say is true, but it wasn't. And nor did they seek a permit or approval before doing any of this work, despite knowing that it was in a historic district, despite knowing that they needed permit work. They destroyed the chimneys, the chimney caps. They've destroyed historic aspects of this house. And what is proposed does not restore the character of which this body is charged with protecting. So I am no longer willing to go along with the restoring of this house via hardy board. It needs to be restored back to the condition it was with wood. There is no evidence in this record that suggests that the wood siding that was on the house needed to be discarded, was not salvageable, none whatsoever. There's no evidence that the chimney needed to be come down, that the chimney caps needed to be discarded. Nor is the applicant being completely candid with this committee, because there's a garage behind this house that we've seen in these images, and nowhere on these plans or on this approval is the request to do anything with that garage, but we see that it is in quite a state of work being done on it without any permit, without any exterior permit, without any plan, without any drawing, without even mentioning it. Were you just going to slide that one by and hope no one noticed?
No, we have drawings that were submitted to the city and we have and received a permit for all the work that's being done in the garage.
Well, it has not come before this committee, nor before landmarks. And we're in the landmarks district, historic district. And so that work cannot continue until you have approval from this
Well, then
body and from landmarks.
at that point, I mean, I think you do need to have a discussion with the building department because they did issue the permit for that work.
Carl and Don can take that up with the building department. But as we sit here now, we need to look at those plans as well. And I think that you need to put this house back in the position where you found it. You need to reclad it in wood, all the detailing, the chimney works. You need to find those chimney pots and put them back on.
Well, I will let Michael intercede at this point. I mean, my guess is that that is probably not going to happen. And you've never required any other house ever.
I've
and
never
sat in
seen
front of
such
this
a
board many
floor. I've never
times to
seen-
remove
I've-
siding off of a house and put it back on. I've never, ever seen that.
Well, guess what?
From this
Paul?
board.
I've never seen someone take off existing restorable siding like this and just discard it without seeking any permit, without seeking any approval. You've effectively demolished the historic character of this house without any permit or permission. You just went ahead and unilaterally did it without abiding by the conditions of the historic district. I cannot abide by that. This was a travesty what happened to this house. And people restore wood siding, wood detailing all the time on homes.
They
throughout
do
Ohio
not
State.
take all of the siding off of the house.
You didn't have
put
permission to
sheathing
take it
on
off.
and then put this, it wouldn't even fit. That siding would not fit. Once we put the sheathing on, that siding would not fit back on the way that it was supposed to. Even just with the added 3/4 inch, there would be gaps all over the place. And I think you know and are aware of that. I understand.
There are
and
other
I
methods
believe
of
me,
restoring the house. You could have had,
I am with you 100%. You know, I've
Paul-
done a lot of work in this neighborhood.
Paul, and
And
Paul,
you
please
know that
know,
I serve on other historic committees. I do a lot of historic tax credits. I agree with you 100%. What happened to this house is not the right thing to happen. Unfortunately, we are at the position now, this is what we have, right? So for the position of this committee to be able to say, we're not going to let you do anything, I think is contrary to the point. We're at this
we're gonna
point
let
right
you do
now.
something.
We can't go back. We can't go back and salvage stuff that is not there, right?
Nope, but you can recreate it. There are carpenters. We have images, we have pictures. Carpenters can recreate
No,
what was there.
and again, Mr. Frondorf, we're at this point right now. Can they? They probably can. Have you ever required any other house to do that in this district? No,
Yes,
you have not.
yes, we have required that wood historic elements be recreated on historic homes. But I have to say, I've never seen anything of this scale, of this, and Paul, you're representing a client. This isn't aimed at you. I understand. I've not seen anything of this scale, of this wholesale disregard for the historic district. And so it can, and by the way, there are other ways of, we don't need to get into that. You can restore the wood siding and replicate what is in the historic photos. We have those photos, they exist. There is no reason it can't be done. You may not want to do it, your client may not want to do it, but that is a different question than can it be done? And the answer is certainly yes, it can.
Well, I mean, at this point, I mean, obviously you're one of the committee members. Let me ask any of the other committee members, are we gonna all fall in line with that recommendation, or is Mr. Frondorf speak for everybody? I mean, it is a committee.
I should also weigh in a little here. I have tried to very, I am very respectful of the process.
Did you seek a permit,
Mr. Frondorf,
Michael?
I am speaking-
Michael, you said
I
you're
am
respectful of the
speaking.
process.
Mr.
Did you
Frondorf,
seek a permit
let
before
me
you began work?
Allow me to speak. We went through a lot of thought when we originally even acquired this property. And we're very particular about wanting to retain the wood siding. I don't want there to be the image that the committee has of the work that we're doing, which I think has been characterized incorrectly as some kind of freewheeling, sneaky kind of process. As I tried to explain the last time I was before this group, we were very disheartened and troubled by the structure of the house itself. Our advice by architects, engineers, and insulation professionals was that there would not be a way to retain the external part of the house and also insulate it in the current structure that it has been.
Can I just interrupt you there for a moment on that point? Because Michael, both you and Paul have said that you consulted a number of people regarding that, and I have restored homes in Ohio City that had the sheathing on the inside, and we blew in insulation from the exterior, and it was not ideal, but the sheathing, you know, in retrospect, the structural value of the sheathing on the inside is perfectly fine. It's held up for 100 years on these homes, and there are a lot of homes that had sheathing on the inside, and lots of them have been restored and insulated. So I'm not sure where you got your advice from, but it would have been useful if you could have come to us for some advice, and maybe if some of us could have helped preserve this siding.
Well,
Well, and I
I
would
agree,
also
Doug,
add that it is disingenuous for you to claim that you respect the process when you did not go through the process
well,
before
it
beginning
is,
work.
it is
But
not
at least before you took the
disingenuous.
siding
when-
off, say, hey, we need to do this, and then it could have had a more productive conversation about it instead of.
Doug, I just want to address the point of if the house were entirely internal, in terms of the sheathing was on the inside of the house, that would have also been a different situation.
Mhm.
But the house was such that the internal sheathing was alternating on all different walls, and that created an issue. And that I couldn't. We were left with an either leaving the house partially open, which would have significantly damaged the house during the winter, or making the decision to do what we did, but know that we would come through design review, also recognizing that design review throughout the neighborhood has allowed fiber cement across the front of the house or on the public facade of the house. That is now what we are proposing. A house that's as recent, 1970 West 44th Street, which is a block away from this house, has done fiber cement board on the front of the house and vinyl throughout. It was done by a house flipper that doesn't even own this house anymore. I am somebody who wants to invest in the neighborhood, yes, but is someone who wants to continue to own and manage and cultivate part of what is our joint community. I'm only looking to be treated fairly, and if you have required fiber cement across the public facade of the house that matches as closely as we can to the existing property, then I'm happy to do that. What I do not want to have happen, which is the impression that I'm getting, is one, to be cast as someone who is being disingenuous, because it's not. We were faced with either the property being continually degraded or doing something that, unfortunately was a judgment call. And, Doug, to your point, if I had different specialists, that could be very well have maybe led to other things, but I did not. I did the best that I could. I think Paul did the best that he could with suggesting based on his extensive experience before the board. I mean, my view is that we're trying to do something here that is consistent with how the board has applied these rules to a lot of other developers, including flippers. And I am just looking for that very same fair treatment.
Michael, I can appreciate that, but if you would have come to us before this, we would not have permitted the wholesale removal of all of the wood and discarding of the wood, perhaps a temporary removal, perhaps not, but it would certainly be going back on in some fashion. To have it, we would never have allowed this house to be in the current state that it is today.
Okay,
And so your claims that there's somehow disparate treatment is simply not accurate.
Well, it's because I'm looking down the street, Alex. It's because I'm looking in throughout the neighborhood. And it's because I've been advised by people who have been before this board multiple times, and also other people who, I mean, I've even spoken to the block club chair, Kathleen Niddle, who is also comfortable. I mean, not that it's only up to Kathleen, but I know that I've been in a number of block club meetings, and we have talked about fiber cement in the front. It is simply not the case that you have required people on a standard basis to remove wood and put it back. It is just not true.
No, this is a unique situation that, but to Alex's point, I'm in total agreement that we've never been confronted with a situation where somebody has just come in and wholesale entirely remove all the siding from a home like this. We've had siding patched in, we'd had one wall here and there say, okay, the siding's no good because, or maybe it was covered with insul brick, and sometimes it's restorable, sometimes isn't. We've seen all kinds of situations before this committee, but this is unique in my experience, as far as I can recall, over the 20 years that I've been involved with this committee. And so I'm not sure I would, I guess just to finish my point, I'm not sure how if I can totally agree with Alex's point of view of saying, I would require you to put wood back up here, but and I apologize, I had some computer issues. I wasn't able to log into the meeting until you were in the middle of your presentation. is just the front proposed as composite siding, or is it the whole thing composite siding now? What's your proposal?
The proposal is that the public facing pieces, so the alley, again, consistent with what we understand to be the approach within the historic district. The alley side, which is the south side, which, again, I would say for us, it was a little bit of a judgment call because it's an alley and whether or not we treat it as an alley, but because it I mean, honestly, down that alley, we have a used car sales lot and the back of a tattoo parlor and a diner. But, it is a one-way alley that we are now going to be covering with fiber cement board in a smooth fashion as had been requested previously. And we're going to, and Paul can go through the specific design, we're going to, at least with the design on the front, try to have as much of the same as what was there before, including the scalloping and the like. As we've mentioned, also the front porch is going to be restored. All the windows will remain on the front of the same size. That's what we've committed to do. As to the garage that was mentioned, we're simply painting and restoring the wood that features that were on that garage. So
you're not doing any construction that required a permit. You said you did get it.
We did get a permit. Everything has been permitted except for the exterior, which we, again, encountered. We made a judgment call based on advice from people who we believed were experts in that area. So,
Who gave you that advice?
The insulators or the I don't have the names of the vendors, but I can get them.
I would like them. I would like their names and the companies. And I would like to know whether or not they were professionals and have done work in this neighborhood before.
Okay, but I mean,
if you're claiming that you received professional advice, I would like to know who you received that professional advice from.
All right. Yeah, we can. I can contact my contractor and get that.
Thank you.
And might I just add to the judgment call that Michael keeps referring to as because of the delay through the city's permitting process, they were not able to get started on this project till late fall. So when they got to the point where, all right, windows are out, because again, the original plan per the permitted drawings is that we were going to keep the siding. That there's not ever an intent to not do that, right? But November comes and it's snowing, and all right, what do? The house is open. We need to figure out a way to protect the house, and the judgment call that Michael's referring to was made. Hey, it's better to protect the house, the integrity of the house, by let's have the siding removed and put up the hardy wrap or the wrap so that we can protect the house so it doesn't degrade over the winter. We would have loved if this had happened in the summer. I am positive that we would have taken that extra step to go ahead and come back before this committee to review what we would have needed to do. Longer discussion, but because going into the winter and needing to get this house and Michael's investment secured and weather safe, that's the decision that was made. So I just wanted to let you know on the process wise. And again, as Michael was saying, the intent was not ever to remove the siding to begin with, right? It was just something that, happened because of where we were in the construction process.
Oh, I appreciate that, but I find that totally unconvincing and unsatisfying explanation. This house has been sitting there since 1880. It could have gone through another winter. The removal of the siding did not need to happen right then and there. It could have gone through the proper process. There was no exigent circumstance. There was no emergency. There was nothing at all to justify what has happened to this house. Going back to the materials, I will stand absolutely firm that the front and alley side must be replaced with wood. If you would like to do hardy on the west and on the north, I will consider that. I won't say right now I'll agree to it. I will consider that. But the public facing, public right of way on Randall and on the alley must absolutely be restored in wood. Otherwise, for two reasons. One, because it's the right thing to do. And two, otherwise it is a horribly dangerous precedent to allow the wholesale discarding of all historic character of a house to simply appear before this board, say mea culpa, come up with some excuses, of which all houses certainly have, and then get away with doing the alternative. Were that the case, we would have no historic district, and this board should just fold up and be done for the day. Because what are we protecting? So that will be at the end when I make a motion, that will be included in my motion, as well as the restoration of the chimney and the historic chimney caps that have sat on top of that chimney for 150 years. That is my duty as a board member, and that is what I'm here to do, and I will see that through.
All right.
Alex, can you
excuse me.
please point out the other property in which you've ever required this?
Excuse me, I'd like to interject. Sorry, for the sake of time. I understand the questions about what has happened in the past, but generally this committee doesn't use precedent to make decisions on their cases for them, generally speaking. But I'd like to know, are there any other comments from the committee members? And if there's anything else we missed about the presentation, please.
I'm and also have to leave right after my comment. But last time I remember that the committee, which was something really nice, that the committee was able to help one of the people that came across, like they came in front of the committee in their restoration. And I'm not an expert in historic preservation or material, so I don't feel like I can give a solid sort of like idea or try to help like with the process. I also I feel overall that it's whoever investing in the neighborhood and whoever is part of the community, it's someone that we want to encourage, but at the same time do what is right by this board, and keeping the integrity of the structure and the structure and the historic characteristic, as well as trying to find solutions from now on, like of how this is going to move forward in a good spirit. So this is the comment I have, and I have to excuse myself because I have to tend to a family issue, and I think we have a quorum, so it should be okay. Yeah, quorum, so it should be okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much.
I have comments too, Dama. While I'm sympathetic, like to the length of the city's processes right now, or even on their best day, I agree with my colleagues that that wasn't perhaps a good excuse or reason to proceed without permission. I also agree with Doug's and share Doug's experience in renovating many properties in this neighborhood, that the conditions you're describing are not unique to this house. And I'm currently renovating one on Clinton that had the same exact scenario where the sheathing method was different on every single side of the house. And we have 4 different insulation strategies on each side to address that. But I also agree with Melaz that, and with Paul, you know, what was done. So how do we move forward? It is part of the Secretary of Interior's for that which this board is beholden to require details that are unique in defining characters of the house to be restored, preserved, and or recreated one for one if they are not able to be restored or preserved. I am gonna pose to my colleagues, is there a compromise where the challenge I see with the Hardy board that's presented is it is a very inauthentic scallop. Hardy does not make a comparable product to the historic scallop. You also had a lot of detail on this home. If you can go to the existing or the pre-demo photos that were not just scallop, there's notching, and I'm not privy to every single terminology. You have the notching, you have a dental, you have rosettes and fluted trim. Those are all defining features of this facade that were present on the north, the east and the south facades that are no longer there. So my problem is not necessarily with hardy board as a material, because I do find it to be a good choice in material for replacement. It's that what hardy offers is compatible with what was there. So perhaps an option could be using hardy on the lapped portions and then having cedar milled for those very distinct details. And my preference would be to see that replicated on the north, east, and south facades in the gabled portions where it was, that you can see clearly in the photographs. But I would be more than fine, I think, with hardy as the lapped and corner board and rake board if that's present. And you definitely can find replications in cedar of those profiles if you're willing to.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that assessment, Donna. I think, I'm sorry to say, Alex, that I think your suggestion to them sounds too much like retribution for committing their crime, which I certainly don't endorse under any way. And so those materials being now gone in a dumpster in a landfill somewhere, I think maybe a way to try to meet them halfway is, as Antonia suggests, that the fish scale scalloping is not the same in the hardy as it is on the original. So, and if they can get replicas out of cedar or some other product that actually is a more accurate interpretation of those shapes and profiles, I could support that. And I would also not support vinyl on any elevation of the house at this juncture, because the photographs indicate that all four facades have a significant exposure to the public way, even if one of those is an alley. And so it's, the cases where we have, said, okay, do it on the front, but you can go with vinyl on the sides or the back. Those are pretty obscure elevations for the most part, where houses are tightly spaced on both sides, and the rear is not visible at all from the public way. So I would have a hard time supporting vinyl under any circumstance.
I agree with Doug, and I feel that the properties that we have made that concession on have been like nondescript workmen's homes that did not have evidence or seen detailed to this caliber. And I can understand your frustration in seeming like we cherry pick where we're enforcing or asking people to do something or not, but it really we explain this all the time to applicants, that we have to take every single property case by case on its own.
So yes, and although we this is the most extreme example, as I say, in the 20 plus years that I've been on this design review committee, I have never seen a situation like this where somebody has just wholesale removed siding, particularly in this case, of a lot of detail, and then come back and ask permission later after the fact. And I think regarding the other point Alex made, or that is setting a precedent that we don't want to do. Again, I think if we come up with a strategy that we can approve, that we feel the majority of us feel good about, that doesn't require all wood, I think we can point to this as an entirely unique case that we're trying to cut you a break and meet you halfway. And that's the way I feel about, as Antonia mentioned, let's see if we can go an extra mile and actually get the scallop siding and those details to match the original, and then replace the lap siding with a composite material, and it will more genuinely represent what was there.
I think that I appreciate this direction, though, you know, in the sense that, you know, trying to find ways that would be potentially, as you've said, Doug, just sort of compromise and also Nia. I think that it's something that if we were to go with this approach, you know, and I would like to talk with Paul a little bit about this, but if we were to go with this approach where the lap siding would be fiber cement with the detail being returned, that would be in the milled cedar. You know, I think that it's something that, I mean, I would say that, you know, I think the point.
This is new to you. We're just throwing this at you. So I understand if you want to get back with Paul and
yeah, well,
talk it over.
Yeah, but I'm also just trying to give you kind of I appreciate that, Doug, but you know, I think that Nia, also your point that you know, some of the other houses may be more of the worker style houses. I don't know the exact term that you had mentioned for that. You know, that's a point taken as well. Doug, when you say that all four sides have public view, I mean, there is the part that's in between the houses. Your feeling is that would be also public viewed?
Well, look at your photo array there. That one on the upper right of that page shows those two sides, and I think it would be hard to make an argument that that's not a significant amount of exposure to public view.
I see. Okay, and we did plan to wrap a portion of that, but let me take that back with Paul. But if we were to take this approach, this is something that it sounds like the board would be.
I would be sympathetic to approving that, I think.
I would ask, we have the historic photos of the house that have the dental molding, the different types of scallop molding, the different trim, the trim on the pediment above on the front, that all had historic detail and woodwork. And look, if we're looking for a compromise, perhaps, but the front of the house, I just cannot abide by allowing the front of the house, that detail, to be lost to history. And I would really urge this board, if we are going to look for a compromise, that the front of the house, the Randall side, we really need to take a close, careful look at the historic photographs that existed as of December of 2020, just 5 short months ago, before this travesty occurred, and ask that be replicated, because it was taken down unnecessarily. It was taken down without any evidence of its failing. And that part does need to be taken back. We have to take, you know, like materials replaced with like materials are our instructions. And we need to take that seriously. And, you know, I will, you know, I will go along with my colleagues, Antonio and Doug and others, about looking for a compromise. But on the front of the house, I really think we need to hold tight there and say, no, a carpenter needs to replicate that, and that needs to go back on the way it was.
Yeah, or we can find a
and I don't think
product that matches it. But
I don't think we're being
profile and dimension of those materials.
Yeah, and I don't think we're being unreasonable in that. You know, this was taken off unnecessarily and without permission. It needs to go back. It really does.
Good. Well,
can we also request that there's more information presented on the garage piece to show?
We never got to see any of it, and we should have. Yes, I think that would be. You said you have drawings, so if you could bring those as part of your next presentation.
And it appears that it's more than just painting going on with the garage.
Okay.
Well, since we have nothing to look at here, if you can bring it back next time, we can have that conversation.
Okay. Well, I mean, the expectation, by the way, is you know, not painting, but repairing and painting. So some of the boards came off, but we are replacing it with boards that would have been the same to the extent that we can.
Okay.
They would be wood boards.
If you could bring more detailed information about that garage, so we can look at it as a project as a whole, that would be helpful.
Okay.
All right, so I guess we're going to motion to table this. Is,
We have to
anyone-
ask, the applicant.
the
if
applicant?
it's okay.
Michael, are you willing to go back and reconsider this if we table it and come back?
Well, I want to be sure that, ultimately, of course, yes, I would like to get an approval on something that we would have so that we can move forward. I do want to have enough information, though, to either propose something that is acceptable to the board for the next round. And Donna, I'm wondering, is there room for the next round, or am I looking, how far out am I looking at to be next? If
It
we,
would be in the beginning of May. So the next meeting is in May. The
2
first
weeks.
2 weeks, okay. So there's room on the agenda for in 2 weeks? Is that
There
right?
should be, yeah, at the moment there is.
Okay, that's good.
But I would have to get your updated plans by the Thursday before the meeting. So I need your presentation materials a week before, or you would miss the deadline to be on the agenda.
I understand. Okay, so I just would like, I mean, what we're planning to do now is to come back with fiber cement on the lap portions with wood in the detail. And we're coming back with just plans on as to the garage, which is, you know, a restoration of the wood components. Would be wood siding as I, you know, which is what has been planned. There have been changes to the internal dimensions of the home, so it's not going to be a garage anymore. But you know, that again has been approved by the city as to the internal components.
I think that's a fair summary of what we're asking you to come back with, yes.
All right.
And Paul, if you
so-
need photographs of the detailing, I have some of them, if you would like more of them. I don't know that you need them though.
Anything that you have, Alex, I'm sure we would appreciate. So if you can get those to Donna and have her send them to me, that would be
Sure,
great.
I'd be happy to do that.
All right, good. All right,
Okay.
everyone. So I think with that, if I think Donna, just the procedure would be I have to be okay with something, or
Oh, you have the owner, you have to accede to the idea of us tabling it, that we're not just telling you, hey, we're tabling it. You have to say that you're okay with it.
The other option is to have the committee vote, and then you could go to landmarks.
But we would not support this, so we have no vote.
oh, I see. So the other approach would be take the comments, have a vote now on the current proposal, but with comment, and then go to landmarks next. I'm just trying to understand the
Whether it's voted yes or no, you can go to landmarks next, as long as a motion is passed.
But Doug's point is that it doesn't appear that it would pass.
Yeah, but even if they got a no today, they could still go to landmarks.
with the revised
yeah.
proposal.
No, with this proposal.
Yeah, they have to be the same.
So, I mean, if you don't like our result, you can say, well, screw you, I'm gonna go to landmarks anyway.
Oh, and I'd make a lot of friends that way. Yeah.
It's your right to do that.
Okay, so I think I understand. Let's say that I will okay and take the comments, go back with Paul, and see you all in 2 weeks.
And just one thing I would add, Paul and Michael, I'd like to see how you're going to deal with the chimneys, the historic chimneys that were there. And even if that's, you're not going to do anything, I at least want it to be studied.
Okay.
All right, then the chair.
And I will move to table. I will motion to table.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Dana, call the roll.
Nia Marinucci,
Aye.
Malaz Al-Jamiabi, you're still here, good.
Okay.
So Adam, you seconded, and Alex,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye. All right, this is
everyone.
tabled.
thanks, Michael,
Thank you, everyone.
thanks, Paul.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
I'll be available for questions if you guys need anything. All right. I feel like we need the pump up music now, not at the beginning of the meeting. All right, Knez in West 47th in Lorain Townhome.
Hello, everybody. It's Jim McKeto. I'll go first. I'm the owner over at Forest City Shuffleboard. We have partnered with Knez on the 5 townhomes behind Forest City that have been built, et cetera. And now we're I've owned this property on the corner for 3 years. I've been trying, I've been thinking about what to do, et cetera. And I own other property in the area down here, and I don't know if you guys are in the nicer part of Ohio City down there, I think, but we have a lot of vacant retail, right? Kind of what this area is missing is not another apartment building with retail on the first floor. For me, it's kind of completing the whole community circle, meaning residents, businesses, and places to go out. So, our proposal of townhomes is to help to kind of achieve that, to kind of add more, a nice residential component along the Lorraine Avenue corridor down here. We need that in the streetscape in a bad way. I mean, I see an accident a week down here at 45th and Lorraine. People drive like maniacs down here. So anyways, this is kind of a way to kind of help calm that a little bit. In terms of the process, we spoke extensively with OCI, the councilman. We have a letter of support from the councilman on this project. City planning, et cetera. And we did the block club thing. Then we went on co-urbanized. So we've been very particular about the process here, just making sure we kind of get, resident buy-in, obviously before coming to you guys and then ultimately to Landmarks. But so that's kind of where, that's kind of where the process sits. I'll let the professionals get into it on the design and architecture of it. But, what I kind of tasked them with was, I want something that kind of fits kind of, starting with Forest City 5, when I bought that property, when I bought this property back in 2016, my whole goal was to get offices, get an operating business, and get residences in one way or another. I've got 3 office spaces above Forest City. I've got Forest City, we're hanging on, but we're still hanging on. And then obviously the townhomes are a big kind of completion of that. So, I think one of the things I wanted to do is something to kind of fit with what we did over at Forest City 5 and kind of blend to the corner, obviously the corner being a big prominent piece over there. And one quick thing before they get into it is at the block clubs and on co-urbanized, people had talked about, because there's an RTA stop right there on that corner. So, I will work with OCI to make sure we've got some nice benches on the street there and trash cans, because obviously the ambassadors for the special improvement district service this area now, which is great. So we'll have somebody to be able to pick up and, remove that garbage. They actually use my dumpster behind Forest City for garbage, which is great. So anyways, that's kind of, the roundabout way of me kind of kicking it off. But anyways, so I guess we'll let, the Knez guys and then Sixmo get into it.
Please let me know when to go to the next slide. I'm here.
Michael, do you have a few words to say from Knez?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael David. I handle land acquisition for Knez. Just want to echo the comments that Jim made. We are falling under the townhouse code for this project. And I think for this, we're seeking schematic approval. I'll just keep my remarks short and turn it over to Pat to kind of go through the project with you guys.
And Donna, I'll just give you a heads up when I need to go to the next slide, but I've got a very brief presentation. You've probably all had a chance to flip through the information. I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Pat Thornton. I'm the president of Sixmo. We've been partnering with Knez on multiple projects, and we're also responsible for the building next door. As Michael expressed, we're seeking consideration for schematic design approval at this time. I think we're presenting the landmarks next week. I think so. It popped up in my calendar, so I assume that's what we're doing.
Yes.
If you can go to the next slide, Donna, that'd be great. We'll flip through these pretty quickly. You all know where the location is. It's at the intersection of West 47th and Lorain, just west of Forest City. If you go to the next slide, you can kind of see some of the neighborhood context. In our case, we are replacing a portion of this. I believe it's a portion of a surface lot that belong to auto dealership. So hopefully we're making an improvement to the neighborhood by doing that. But we can jump right into that third slide there. The site drawing is, I won't go through all the stats that are listed on here because you can browse that on your own. But it's 8 units in 2 buildings. We've got one building that addresses Lorain and one that follows the angle on West 47th. Everything's kind of tucked back in there, and we've hidden kind of the utilitarian portions of the building, and we've used the front of these buildings to express a little bit of architecture. But again, I won't go into all those details. We have at the tail end of the presentation, I think it's at the tail end of the one that you got here, are all the floor plans. If you're curious about the size of units and that sort of thing, that information's all there. But I don't want to dig too deep into that. That's stuff that we can do on our own time, I suppose.
I'm sorry, Pat, could you go back one to the photos? And I was trying to figure out, is there okay, the one in the middle on the top is the one that would be incorporate the front elevation of this, right? That's your corner on the right-hand side there, isn't it? The 47th.
Yes, to the
same as the building. Okay, just wanted to make sure I had that right.
Yep. Sorry, I took for granted the location because I've been out there too many times, I think. If we can go ahead, maybe flip past that site plan. We've just discussed that a little bit. Here we've got where we're at. We're at this is the Lorain Road elevation. So this is a mixture of materials kind of organized to reflect the context of the neighborhood, but at a more pedestrian scale. We've got some amenities there like the Juliet balcony and the active lower level spaces kind of help to activate that streetscape. While those raised stoops that we have for these units help define that demarcation between the public and the private space. And it helps define that residential space a little bit better. Along Lorain Road, and we'll see when we get to the materials board, it's a mixture of brick and fiber cement panels. We've got composite trim up there. The windows are a premium vinyl and the railings are aluminum. The railings closer, actually all the railings that are visible here are all a double top rail. We've used a simpler version of that on the areas that aren't necessarily directly in view for the public. And again, we'll see a lot of these slides or a lot of these materials when we get to that materials slide. So if you could go ahead one there, Donna. This is the elevation along West 47th. As you can see, this is more of a transitional elevation when you consider the aggregate of the 2 buildings. As you travel west and turn north up 47th, we start to transition the detail from that highly detailed Lorain Road to somewhat less detail that reflects some of the neighboring buildings here along 47th. As we travel up here, we encounter that space in between the 2 buildings, and then we turn the corner a little bit, and you start to get a better view of that second 3-unit building along West 47th. Now that second building's staggered back away from the intersection a little bit into 3 components. It follows the angle of the road. This eliminates any vast plane effect that may happen with that building. Big brick plane is something that we were trying to avoid in this particular case. Hidden away up at that corner intersection is one of my favorite pieces, which is a lower level, a garden level apartment. The view of the entry is obscured by this outswung green space that's there. And I believe that little space it's one of my favorite points in the whole project for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I think it offers a really good gathering area for the neighborhood, but it certainly lends to Jim's point of the bus stop being right there. It's going to be a popular place for people to gather. Along West 47th, the materials are a mixture of the same materials that we had on Lorain Road, but we go away from the fiber cement panels and we start to get into brick. Again, the materials are generally the same. The stoops, as actually you can see on this one, the stoops over on the lower left-hand corner of this are now metal as opposed to the larger, higher ones we had on the prior elevation. So this simply shows the end walls of the buildings. Generally just functional design here. The penetrations are where they are because they make sense to the interior space. You know, a lot of the materials here are present relative to the other facades, but this is, you know, a portion of that transition from those street-facing materials, and you can see as we get into the interior of the space, we've gone to vinyl lap siding on the rear walls. Most of the view of that is concealed pretty well. If you can slide forward, we might even get a view. Actually, I think one of the renderings shows us a real nice view. You can see this back sides are vinyl siding on the field face. There's a rendering that kind of gives you a sense for how well obscured that is. So as we get into the materials, again, we talked fiber cement panel and brick. We're using a thin brick material here with browns and tans. The windows are premium vinyl. Our lap siding has a 5-inch exposure. It's a pretty typical lap siding there. Entry doors are 3-panel entry door. Those entry doors are at least on the 3-unit building, they will be accessed through a pre-manufactured steel stair that has an aluminum rail attached to it. The garage doors are all long panel doors like you like to see. And then there's that aluminum railing down on the lower right-hand side, one top rail where we're not quite out there visible to the public, and then a double rail at that front. Generally, that's pretty much everything that you see from the Lorain Road facade. So if you can slide to the next slide, we'll start to look at some renderings. I think that's the order that they're in. Yes. Aerial view here of the corner shows the relationship of those two buildings, as well as their relationship to the neighboring properties. So you can note that the gradual transition of materials from right to left on the sheet here, a lot better here in the rendering than in those two elevations. You can kind of see how things slowly transition to those brick facades of the 3-unit building. And from here, you can just start to the center bottom, you can just start to get a peek of that English basement style garden level, kind of hiding back there behind the planted area.
Can you point out on here, Pat, you said that there were, on your material board, you had 2 different bricks. Can you show us on the elevation where those different bricks are proposed?
Easier to see on the flat elevations. If we could roll back up to the front elevation of the Lorain Road, yeah, that there. So I guess it's not that much easier to see. It's easier to see on my monitor probably than yours. The leftmost panel and the center panels that are pulled away from the facade, those are fiber cement panels. The back set are the bricks, the 2 brick colors. So to the right, the central pieces are brick, and on the corner we've got that darker brick on the corner. So if we can go back to that rendering of the aerial view.
So the brick goes up to the underside of the 2nd floor on the projected forward unit. Is that correct?
Yes, it absolutely does. Yep. We've kept brick at the street level, and then as we get a little bit higher, we go to that fiber cement panel.
All right, thank you.
Let's see anything else I wanted to comment on here. You can start to see how that relationship of that corner, and this is of course the rendering. I think that's on the cover sheet, so you've seen it 1,000 times already. But the relationship of that corner to where the bus stop will be, I think that's going to be a great little active space. Moving ahead, I think we have a flat view of West 47th next. Yeah, generally a flat view of West 47th. So from here, you're getting a sense of that facade along West 47th. So you can see how each unit in the 3-unit building has its own identity. It's not, that there's easily distinguishable identity for each of those, as well as the units along Lorain Road and the 5-unit building, obviously, as well. You can also see the relationship of these buildings to the Forest City 5 project, which is off to the left, the prior project. And again, the mixture of materials is that same brick of Forest City 5 starts to make some appearances here in this building. So you may recognize that from the materials board. Moving ahead here, we have an aerial looking west, I believe, next. Yeah, aerial looking west kind of gives you a sense of the relationship to the other buildings adjacent that aren't necessarily associated. That interim, there is a structure in the interim between the Forest City Shuffleboard and this particular project. Then you can see the scale of the building across West 47th in this view. The next slide, I believe, is a view from the intersection. Yes. You know, similar to that aerial view from the intersection, you get a better sense of scale from the ground level than you do from a helicopter, basically. Again, you know, these views you know, are intended to give you a sense of things. They're certainly not intended to give you a sense of time, because those guys in front of the corner unit have been walking their dog for the last 15 minutes and haven't gotten real far. But you know, the idea here is that we're trying to really give you a sense for what this project can be. If we could slide to the next one. I think the next one is, yeah, one of my favorites. This is that outswung corner garden. And again, you can barely tell that there's a lower level behind that. So it's a nice concealed, kind of a fun little secret entry there to that garden unit. That's actually a part of the entire corner unit. It could be separated or it could be attached. I think the last one, is one more close-up, if I'm not mistaken. Oh no, this is a view looking south on West 47th from across the street. Here you get a better sense of the deep angle cut of the 3-unit building, and you can also tell from here that the building does a great job of concealing its interior on its own. The exterior, the shape of the building conceals the interior pretty well. There's just very small vistas of the backside of these buildings where we have the not necessarily premier facade elements back there. So it does a great job of kind of keeping itself hidden. I think the next thing we have on here are those. Oh, we do have one more enlarged view. So again, another view here where you can kind of get a sense that 3-unit building, although it is, you know, similar in forms to Forest City 5, it has its own unique characteristics, and it actually is fairly well detailed. It's not just a big brick block. So that was the point of kind of showing you, you know, this particular slide. So if we could go ahead one, I think we might get into the plans next. Yeah, so I'll let you all browse those plans if you can kind of slowly slide through those. 2-car garages for every unit except for one. All of the garages face the rear. Everything, all the doors are concealed. So there's not, you know, we're not driving down the road staring at garage doors. The corner unit is especially unique because it actually has a walkout above the garage. So it brings a little bit of every unit has outside space. That outside space, I think, is a little bit unique. It's closer to the street, a little more tangible. The other outside spaces are a little bit higher off the ground, and are almost a little bit, I want to say a little more private, but they're almost too sheltered in some ways up there. But this one, I really love the unit over top of that garage because that really brings you down to the street level, or at least close to the street level, with your outdoor space. If you can flip forward, just quickly go through those last few slides. That's the garden level apartment. It's just a small efficiency. Again, the ground floor plan, or the first level floor plan, which will be the next slide. Go ahead. Main living areas on that entry level. If you can go ahead, we have bedrooms up above that, and then we have above that, we come to the active space upstairs, the penthouse as we've called it, and then the roof decks. And that's good. That's you know, similar across all of those 5 units on that Lorain side. So a lot of active space facing Lorain. Some of it just happens to be up in the air. Then I believe the next sheets we have are the plans of the 3-unit building, which is a similar configuration, ground floor with some active space, 2-car garages, and then we move up to a main living area. And from the main living area, we move up to the bedrooms, and then from those bedrooms up to the penthouse. Now on this particular building, the penthouses don't have a large interior space or a very terribly functional interior space. It's pretty much, that roof deck is pretty much dedicated to outdoor space. So that's the the nickel tour, you know, I'm here to answer questions. Again, we're here to respectfully request, you know, consideration for schematic design approval. We are, you know, we will be visiting the folks at Landmarks next week. But obviously we want to make sure that we engage your commission as a part of the process, although, as we've learned, is extremely important from the prior applicant.
Well,
Thank you.
again,
And it's, sorry, you just, two quick things here from Jim McHugh again from Forest City Chef Board. One, it'll be my 6th curb cut I've officially gotten rid of, right? There used to be 2 curb cuts, one on Lorain, one on 47th. We've gotten rid of those. And the access to this will be to my parking lot at Forest City, where the Forest City 5 accesses to as well. So it acts as a, you know, kind of just a one curb cut in, you know, 100 feet or so off of Lorraine Avenue. And then the only other thing I forgot when I first mentioned this is, you know, I've said this, Don has heard this 16 times already, but like I had this vision down here of, you know, people smoking cigarettes in their underwear, like in France, you know, kind of down this way. So that's kind of the intention is, I mean, all 5 of the residents who bought the townhomes at 465 utilize their outdoor space on their rooftop quite exclusively and quite a lot. So to me, that's neat because it kind of helped just make this more pedestrian friendly down here. You know, it gives you a better feel of safety, et cetera, when you see, you know, more people out on the streets. So anyways, I guess that's all I had. I forgot to mention at the beginning, but anyways.
well, now you've planted an image of people in their underwear smoking cigarettes I can't erase, but I think this project, this design has a lot going for it in terms of, you know, fitting into the neighborhood. I guess a couple of things off the top that I have a little trouble with is, and maybe the true materials, you know, they're not always represented in computer renderings. I don't see a lot of, I'd like to see more contrast in the colors of the sidings. You know, they, you know, a little bit of punch, a little bit of contrast. It looks a little bland to me, I have to say, and maybe, but I do like the idea that you've broken it up with running brick up the recessed facades. I think that's a good breakup of units. But I think you defeated your purpose by the roof over the penthouses up there is this continuous line that makes it look like an apartment building. If you took the demising walls and let them extend up through the roof to break up the roof, I think that would continue to help the definition of them being individual dwelling units. And then the last thing that I would want you to think about is, and again, I'll wait for others to listen to what everybody else has to say. Maybe nobody agrees with me, is the garage on the corner unit. You have that angle that goes along the street front, so the wall is pressed right up against the street. If you can kind of square that garage off some more to create a little triangular planting bed at the ground level, I think I would like that a little bit better.
Quick question or comment. I believe Matt Moss is on the line from the city. I saw him on here earlier. I didn't know if you had something to say about the project.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I wanted to just make some comments and inform the committee about some of the dynamics that are going on here too. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the city has mapped a tool called the pedestrian retail overlay on Lorain. The goal of which is to create retail and pedestrian oriented business space on Lorain. And it's with that understanding and that dynamic on Lorain that when staff initially met with the development team and the architecture team on this project, we encouraged them to if not create, you know, as Jim mentioned, the challenges with creating retail space on this corridor. Well, if that was not feasible for this project, to draw inspiration for the design from some retail or more commercial oriented components. So it's difficult to disagree with Jim because he's a very thoughtful, I think, business owner and developer in terms of how he tries to work with the city to partner with us in achieving our goals for our four corridors like Lorain. But that's something that I think was missing here in this design, unfortunately. But curious to what you all think about that. And I would just add that it's likely that this would need a conditional use approval from the Planning Commission for not having that retail space, because the PRO requires that the ground floor of buildings be commercial space. So that's not an unreasonable request, I think, in this case, given the property and given the proposed use. But just so you're aware, that's something that I think will likely need to be done for this project to be approved. So happy to answer any questions from the committee. I know you all are very thoughtful in terms of design and materials, so very eager to hear what you have to think.
Thank you, Matt. I might pick up on that because, Matt, you expressed a lot of the same thoughts that I had in looking at this project. It's difficult on Lorain Avenue for a number of reasons, but one, I can't think of another townhouse project on Lorain Avenue. It's a commercial street. Sure, there are dwelling units above commercial space, but I think this would be the first standalone townhome development there, which is not to say it's inappropriate. It's just to say that it would be the first and would be unique. And so the challenges that Matt expressed are before us for the first time. In looking at this and trying to avoid that and satisfy the aims of the PRO, and this while I use this term, I don't mean it to be necessarily a pejorative, and so Pat and others, please don't take it that way, but it has this sort of fortress or defensive architectural element to it on the first floor, where the living spaces are all elevated. In the first level there that we're looking at in that image, there's no living space behind it. The garage, the cars pull in behind that. And there might be a bonus room or something, but that's not the primary living area. Donna, I don't know if you have that up already, but the garden, so the English gardens, as you called them, Pat, on the 47th side, I think is a very, very nice feature. And if you look at townhomes in other commercial districts in other cities like Washington, DC, Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, you'll see that those townhomes have a bit of a setback from the street and that garden, English garden element to it, so that living space can exist right there at street level. And I asked Donna to pull up a project that is currently, I understand, under construction at 14th and Superior. Not to say that this is a perfect or an exemplar, but simply to show that I think that a drawing like this, a rendering like this, and Donna, if you could go down, would be much more appropriate on Lorraine Avenue, where we have 3- and 4-story brick and wood buildings that matches the cadence, the fenestration of, I think, the predominant building type on Lorraine. The materials, the windows, and I don't know if there's a street elevation view there, Donna, but it also, and the setback from the street, I think are all features that would benefit a development, a townhouse development here on Lorraine Avenue. I could offer other renderings that I found, but I just thought that because this one is also being done by Knez, is being done here in Cleveland, just a mile or two away, that would be a good example. And I don't know, Matt, if you have anything to add to that, but I just thought that this style would be better, or the development that already exists north of the project on 47th, to continue that cadence, that style, that brick, all the way down to Lorraine and wrap the corner and then march east on Lorraine, would be also appropriate, maybe a little bit of a setback. But I think that those design features would be much improved. And then only because we're talking conceptual here, I didn't need to get into the material selection too much to those details, but I would just note that I can't go along with any vinyl windows in a historic district, just is a matter of rule and principle. So I think that's my feedback, but I would look to what's being built by Knez at 14th and Superior as an example. I think it would be much more appropriate here on Lorraine.
Yeah, Alex, I would just add briefly that I think that reflects a lot of the preliminary conversations staff had on this project. Understanding that I think this is a townhouse form and general style that can work in the city and in the neighborhood, but I think because of Lorraine and the character of the street, we were pushing them to go in a slightly more commercial direction that reflects, at least staff felt, the character of the street.
Matt, was it staff's recommendation for commercial there and apartments above it or condos above it, or what were you thinking specifically?
Yeah, so the initial, and I definitely want Jim to share his perspective too, if he would like. The initial conversation we had as with planning staff, OCI staff, and the design team and the owner was to talk about the possibility of live workspace or at least space that had that character to it. So larger windows or more storefront feeling windows. We shared some examples from some other cities that represent that type of form. If it's not strictly commercial space, because as Jim, I think, as Jim indicated very early on, that his desire is to not build a commercial building, and that's fine. I think that to your point, Alex, it's not that that townhomes can't work here. I just think that we were pushing them initially to do more space that, even if it's not built or sold as live work units, would lend itself to that type of form because of its location in the neighborhood.
That makes sense. I understand.
Hi, I'm Hannah with Knez. I just wanted to address a couple of those points, if that's all right. We have certainly heard the comments from the planning staff about some of the more commercial architectural features they'd like to see on the lower levels, and we have significantly increased the amount of glass on that level, and we could certainly take a look at that again. I just want to speak to some of our other projects, since you were mentioning the Avenue specifically. This site is a little bit challenging in its geometry. We have that kind of tight angle at 47th and Lorain that squeezes that corner of the project, and it is a pretty tight site for us. So in order to make that kind of unusual geometry work and also be able to get the density or the amount of units that we need for this project to be economically viable and to make sense for us and for Jim to pursue, the size of those units on the front just doesn't really allow for some of the things you're asking for. We do meet the active living space requirement of the townhouse code on those first floors and all of the units. We would love to have more space on those lower levels there, but unfortunately, because of the geometry, we can't make it really any bigger down there to allow a larger office. It's certainly significant, a sufficient amount of space for a home office, but it's just a little bit limiting to try to push the buildings back and also expand that lower level living space. It's just a little bit prohibited by the site geometry.
I think adopting historical townhouse forms and uses is challenging nowadays because of the insistence, whether right or wrong, of including an attached garage underneath or on the first floor on the pedestrian at grade level. Forces so many unnecessary design errors. It's very unfortunate that we tried to always tuck our cars under our living spaces. It really impacts the architecture and design of the pedestrian experience on the other side of that building. And I don't know if there's room to have a detached garage here or move it elsewhere, but a lot of the design constraints that you're articulating would be resolved by eliminating that.
Yeah, understood. We, kind of have to balance that with the fact that we're required to provide parking per the units, and also we need to be able to sell the units. And it's, an unfortunate reality that currently, we need to have some sort of an attached garage on these. There's no room on this site for detached. But yeah, I definitely understand your point.
I have comments, and I apologize because my internet has been super spotty through the second half of this presentation. So if someone else has said these things, my apologies. But I do agree with, while I'm sympathetic and obviously can see the site shape and
Nia, you're muted or something. We can't hear you.
one. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, guys. What I was trying to get at was, while I can visually see the issues with the site shape and what you're describing, Hannah, I think that falls into the category of a problem of your own making versus like an actual hardship when you're proposing a use that you're, like a foreign use basically to the site and the fabric at this location. But I also would agree with Matt's commentary that, yeah, I think that there could be space for townhomes at this location, even if there aren't historic townhomes and even if we are in the PRO. But I feel that if the exception is made to allow townhomes on this site in Lorain, that we would have, I would want them to be held to a high standard in terms of the caliber of design, especially as this proposal stands, in materiality. And my main issue with materiality as presented is that there's an inauthenticity to it. I would really strongly oppose the thin brick application. I've seen it on a lot of different properties that Knez has built before. And while I think you guys have a great quality of construction, that material already, I feel, not only looks inauthentic, but hasn't aged well in the historic district. Based on what I've seen, I would not support vinyl in any capacity on this project. I think that aluminum clad windows and hardy board would be appropriate and would give this property, this project, the level of substance that it needs to hold its own on this corner and in this corridor. I love the limited curb cut and the use of double dipping on existing access space. I think that's fantastic. I love the garden apartment. I feel like there are parts of this where, like what Alex said, we're kind of getting to that Philadelphia, Washington, DC, where there are certainly more examples of townhomes that hit that language. But I feel like it's lacking a little bit on Lorain. And at the other side of that, I also understand the defensibility aspect of Lorain, because I feel like, for example, the project on 41st and Lorain that has the sliding glass door space in 41st has a huge challenge. I don't think that that was a good solution in terms of defensibility. So I feel like you have kind of a push and pull, balancing engagement at the pedestrian level and defensibility for a homeowner, but you're also proposing this go here. So I would like to see a bit, I think that there needs to be a solution. I think what you're presenting here needs to be improved upon while having the challenge of satisfying both of those competing forces. I think that pretty much personally, I really like the language you're striking up the 47 side more than what's facing Lorain. I think that that's more compelling. And I would like to, see a bit, be compelled by the Lorain facade as well.
Thank you, Antonia. I guess I would expand on that a little bit, that I do agree with you and Matt and Alex, everyone else, that this should have a little bit more commercial feel to it than the sort of wood frame townhome we see on a side street. I think we should do better, like maybe even, and the fenestration should correspond, as Alex said in his example, to something a little more commercial, or call it the brownstone look, or maybe it's all like punched openings in a brick wall, and maybe the front facade is all brick. That would correspond better to the 2- and 3-story commercial buildings along Lorraine Avenue, certainly.
I have just a general question. If we were to go in that sort of a direction, are you comfortable with a flatter facade along Lorain?
Maybe.
Losing some of those bump outs?
Absolutely. I don't care for those bump outs at all. That is not a form that is found on Lorain. Historically, it just doesn't belong there. And that's why I brought up the ones on Superior downtown, because I think that is a cleaner, simpler look. I agree with Nina on the thin brick. If we could do something more appropriate in terms of material, but I think simplifying it Don't overcomplicate this. Really, have the details that are there, but they're subtle, like the cornice, like what you show there, that Knez is building, that shows on the corner a brick cornice. The window fenestration matches much more, I think, of Lorraine. It's cleaner, it's simpler, and it maybe not that view, but some of the other ones.
But yes, it's both modern as well as
right there, like that. Yeah.
I totally agree with my colleagues. I think that there's a lot that's successful about this, of the proposal for Superior that could be translated to Lorraine, and agree that the form presented, especially on the, and maybe I think that's why maybe the 47th facade feels it is more compelling to me, is because it's kind of striking a more contextual balance, and not just contextual and that it's matching more closely your previous project to the north, but for those same reasons, the articulation, the materiality, the rhythm are more authentic to the corridor.
I would also just briefly add, if I may, if there's any way I can assist in figuring out alternative parking solutions. The lot behind these units, I understand, is also for the retail use of Forest City Shuffleboard. But if that were even an option in order to provide parking and really solve, I think, some of the downstream design effects that has on these homes, I'm certainly available to help figure out how we can make parking work for all the uses that are going on here. Because I think if it can result in more pedestrian and human-oriented design, I'm happy to do what I can.
Thank you, Matt. I think that the automobile is, the externalities are only growing. So thank you.
I don't know if that creates like an unreasonable difficulty in selling these units if the parking is in that lot as opposed to being, a garage here. But again, happy to discuss more if that's even something you want to explore.
Yeah, I do just want to mention that kind of ties into also some of the comments comparing this to our Avenue Townhomes, which is a project that I also oversaw the design of, very familiar with. What we're at 47th here, so we're a little bit like towards the outskirts of the more heavily new construction developed areas in Ohio City, especially for residential, especially for townhomes. So we also have to be conscious of what's going to work for our business, what we can actually build and sell there for a reasonable price point. We can't sell a $700,000 townhome at West 47th and Lorain right now. I mean, obviously, we're hoping things will change and this will flow with Jim's vision to keep pushing that commercial district west down Lorain. But right now, like, we have to be conscious of what we can make for an economically viable project at that particular site. It's just, unfortunately, it's not the same conditions that we have on Superior downtown currently.
Well, and I appreciate that, but we also have to look long-term. And while that may or may not be true at the moment, it's unlikely to be true. It's even less likely to be true in 5-10 years. And we're looking at the historic district here and building for the next generation. It's not like you get to build and then 10 years later we get to put something else there. This is once in a generation's opportunity to fill in these missing teeth along the way. And so we got to get it right.
Yeah, I think you've got
to be able to sell something, but we've got to live with the product.
Yeah, long beyond. And I also don't agree that you're on the frontier of Lorraine Avenue. Other homes, for better or for worse, in Ohio City have sold at that price point in locations that you just wouldn't think it would command that. The real estate market is surprising in Ohio City right now, so I wouldn't discount that.
I think too that we're as a board, we're tasked with the integrity of the historic district, but also as stewards of this neighborhood, we're also wanting to figure out what's equitable for our community. And while we appreciate the economic balance that a developer has to take, we have to ensure that what we're putting in is in fact equitable and going to stand the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, we understand that. I don't think we're proposing something that we don't want to see there in 10 years that we think will not stand the test of time or be a positive attribute to the neighborhood. I mean, we are very excited to be filling in a vacant lot, to be taking away a surface car lot on Lorain, which I know has been one of the city's goals for a long time. So, you know, we do want this to be intended to be a positive addition to the neighborhood. We always have to do that balancing act to make sure it's also a viable project.
So I have the similar concerns with the thin brick as a, quality long-term building material. And so if that's the way you think you really need to go, maybe you could augment it in some way by adding some details, some soldier coursing over the windows or banding, or maybe there is some way that you can enhance the appearance of it so that it's not just, okay, we're gonna just slap up the thin brick across the whole face of this thing, or add some detailing to it. I'm not trying to tell you, I don't know what the answer is myself, but I share that concern, but would like to figure out a way to, none of us is trying to make this an unaffordable project for you. We're just trying to, as others have said, be good stewards of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do think there've been a number of design suggestions that we'd be happy to consider, and we can try to incorporate a lot of this feedback into and even improve version of the design.
I have a clarification question for Carl. Carl, they, at the beginning of this presentation, asked for schematic design approval, but we're just reviewing this for concept, correct? So we do not vote until final. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a difference, and we just had this come up at another project, is that we only have the two-phase it's basically you're looking at a schematic,
but
because this is a little bit further on than just a concept right now. This is much more thought out.
But do we vote or no?
You're not voting, you're giving feedback only. But I should say this, and because it's been mentioned a couple of times, I confirmed with Don, we do not have this scheduled next week. We have this scheduled for the 13th of May for Landmarks Commission. So, and I say that because there was a bunch of feedback today, and Matt had offered about parking solutions. This might actually give an opportunity to go back and implement some of those suggestions to get a second round with this committee before going to the Landmarks Commission, so it could be a little bit more fleshed out and address some of the concerns.
Well, that sounds like a great suggestion, Carl.
And for Knez, you need not totally reinvent the wheel. I mean, you have that project down on Superior to draw from.
Here's a question, because I have an old saying in my old job, time kills all deals, right? And we've been sitting on this for a while because we were bombarded by a 47th and Bridge situation that I won't get into for fear of me croaking over dead from an enormous blood pressure situation. So that aside, my question for you, and Hanna and I talked about this, and again, I'm not the expert here, just a driven guy who just wants to get stuff done. If you were to, you guys mentioned something about taking the brick design from 47th and wrapping it and taking it all the way around, or not wrapping it, having the two buildings. Is that, if we did, and again, you may have covered this, but is that too bulky? Is that too clunky? If that's, again, Hanna and I talked about reversing the designs actually in the buildings a while back from what's on Lorain now to 47th and what's on 47th to Lorain. But that was just my quick interjection here so I can have that for my own knowledge.
No, I think you need to address the fenestration too, as others have pointed out.
Yeah, so they're looks like they're separate units as opposed to.
Well, for me, I think what we've expressed on the board is that it's not just a materiality solution. We feel that there needs to be massing and other considerations taken here to address the request to be accepted from the PRO.
Right.
I had just a process question. is there a reason we're not on the agenda for landmarks next week? We submitted it, I think, 2 weeks ago to be on that agenda, and we already got bumped. We were supposed to be at this meeting 2 weeks ago, and we got bumped to this one because the schedule was full. So if possible, we would like to stay on schedule with the 22nd, just so we can keep our internal processes on schedule.
We had other items that had been queuing, waiting as well. So that's how we've had to handle it, unfortunately. But if you're looking at how this would play out, if all goes well, this still could be finished by the second May meeting for landmarks. Because you could come back for here, then get final approval. Because you still have to go on the 13th and then come back on the 27th.
Twice in May, then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Depending on how quickly you're able to turn around everything.
Yes, you may not receive exactly the same comments from Landmark, but I'm sure they're going to raise some of the same issues we have.
We did do an informal meeting with landmarks, and these are different comments than we got from them or initially. So, you know, again, if there is any way we could go there sooner, just so we can collect all the feedback we can before we undertake any major changes, you know, that's obviously our preference.
Well, I mean, that's understandable that there'll be differences because each local design review knows that historic district better or perhaps best. And that's why we're an advisory committee to offer those, because we're most familiar with the context.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I would suggest moving forward is just studying the context a little closer. You guys included images of the context in your presentation. I would just take a look at the facade that you're actually proposing directly adjacent to the context. I think there's some really beautiful historic buildings in this neighborhood, directly across the street especially, that you might be able to draw from just in terms of like elevation datums, heights, and things like that, that might be able to really tie your facade into the historic fabric without mimicking or copying it. One other comment is just, is it possible to add any landscaping on Lorraine Avenue?
We have hardscape planters proposed along Lorain. We're taking those all the way out to the property line, so we have maximized that as much as we can.
I mean, in terms of within the right of way, do you guys have the right to add an additional planter or small tree in the right of way?
I'm not sure, but we would.
The issue we may have.
We'd be happy to work.
The
with
issue we may
those.
have, it's an RTA. Well, it's also a bus stop too, Hannah. So I've broached the RTA in the past, and it was a pretty hard no on a lot of things. So yeah, if we can, that'd be great. Another thing too to keep in mind is when the streetscape does come, hopefully, you know, before 2030, but it's funded. I think it's an awesome idea and improvement. So I hope it goes sooner than that. But the streetscape also too will help with that, is how I've seen again, I know it probably hasn't been updated in 4 or 5 years, but the intention is to get some, you know, more tree lining along the street, along with parking and bike lanes and everything else. So I think that'll help. But yeah, we can talk to OCI or Councilman McCormick or whoever, but I agree, the more trees in the landscape, the better, because that kind of gives it that DC, Philadelphia, New York, Brooklyn kind of feel about it, which is, anyways.
Yeah, Adam, I think I just want to jump in and say I think your suggestion is really good. I would just caution about planning to plant trees now because of how extensive I think the work will be on Lorain, that it would likely have. I would hate to see a tree go in and have to be removed because we're redoing the curbs. So I'm more than happy to help coordinate too, and with the committee's input on how to figure out how to best plan for more greenery on Lorain.
Thank you, because I agree wholeheartedly with Adam on that. So.
Hanna and team, do you guys have enough information here to know, you know, what direction to go, or do you have any more clarifying questions?
I think that's enough feedback, and I'd assume we could reach out to you or Matt or anyone else involved if we do have questions in the interim.
Yes. And then this recording of this wonderful meeting will be online for anyone to review as well.
All right, well, thank you.
Real quick then, process, can we get the next meeting then, so we don't get pushed again? And we'll just, I'll have to maybe pay the architects a few more extra bucks, but I'd like to get it done. So we can get on this meeting in 2 weeks with the changes, or no?
So I would need the complete presentation with all your updates the week before. So the Thursday prior to the meeting. That's the deadline.
So next Thursday?
Yeah.
Next Thursday, got
So
it.
it's kind of quick turnaround. But assuming you can get them to us, you can be on the agenda. Unless it fills up for some reason, which I don't think it will.
Wait, to clarify, Donna, is our next meeting May 6th?
Yes.
So that will be
2 Thursdays from now.
April 29th. So it gives you guys 2 weeks from today, if you would like to. Right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for the feedback.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Carl.
Thanks,
And
guys.
I will conclude our
Is that the
recording.
end of our agenda? I think that's it, isn't it?